Somalis are not terrorizing this nation. We are helping it thrive. Somalis have always seen themselves as a fabric of this nation. Not only are we not going anywhere, we are not going to allow anybody to make us feel less Minnesotan or less American.
Good evening, America. This is Harlan Whitaker, and you are watching Harlan Reports. Thank you for inviting me into your living rooms on this historic winter night. Whether you are finishing up dinner with your families, or just sitting down to rest after a long day of hard work, I need you to lean in close. Tonight, we aren't just reading the headlines. Tonight, we are witnessing history. Tonight, we are watching the dawn of a new era of justice that so many of you have prayed for night after night. I hope you are sitting down, because the news coming out of Washington and Minnesota this evening is going to shake the very foundation of the corrupt establishment. It is a story of promises made, and finally, promises kept.
It turns out that a core group of Somali Americans or refugees, whatever they were at that point in time, figured out how to game the system, and they figured out that fraud paid, corruption paid, crime paid, because they weren't held accountable. And so they kept doing it until ultimately the house of cards fell down.
No, you couldn't be more right, Laura. And frankly, Ilhan Omar found the blueprint pretty early. She's clearly been in this for personal gain. She's made tens of millions of dollars since she's entered Congress. And what do you know? We find that her friends are getting rich in the process too. But like I said, this is intentional. It's by design. Ilhan Omar was the individual in Congress who introduced this legislation that ultimately led to Feeding Our Future being able to defraud $250 million. And you gotta laugh, because just the other day, she's complaining, well, it's because we don't have guardrails in place, and that's why these third parties were able to go steal from taxpayers. Well, Ilhan, you were in charge of setting up the guardrails.
Minnesota Governor Tim Walz is in hot water over fraud in his state. Now, one GOP lawmaker is fighting back with the Walz Act. Congresswoman Miller Meeks saying, quote, the Walz Act is named for a reason, to ensure this level of negligence can never be repeated anywhere else in America. This bill puts hard safeguards in place to protect taxpayer dollars, shut the door on scam artists, and bring real accountability back to government programs. The Small Business Administration also taking action. SBA Administrator Kelly Loeffler announcing on X in part, today I informed Governor Tim Walz that the SBA is halting $5.5 million in annual funding to Minnesota pending further review. Pressure is also building at the local level. Minnesota mayors speaking out over concerns state fiscal policies are hurting their residents.
Within the last 3 months, this has really gone downhill. And Brian, if we do the quick math, $9 billion in fraud divided by 5.79 million Minnesotans comes out to roughly be $1,500 a person that each Minnesotan, each hardworking Minnesotan has had stolen from them from the Walz administration and the policies coming out of St. Paul.
I'm not a Democrat. I'm not a Republican. I'm a Minnesotan, and I'm frustrated with how it had happened, as well as the communication that's happened. So really, our mayors are joining together not to point fingers and blame, but we're here to help solve the problem.
I am looking at the monitor here in the studio, and I am seeing the reports flashing across the screen, and I am struggling to hold back tears of pure relief. For so long, we have watched our beautiful country be mocked. We have watched politicians in Washington treat our flag like a rag and our tax dollars like their personal piggy bank. We felt forgotten. We felt like no one was coming to save us. But on this freezing night of December 27, 2025, the warmth of justice is sweeping across the land. Breaking news has just hit the wire that is sending shockwaves through the swamp. The People's House, your House of Representatives, led by brave Republicans, has officially launched proceedings to expel Representative Ilhan Omar from Congress. You heard me right. The days of looking the other way are over, but that is only the beginning. At the very same moment, our Commander-in-Chief, President Donald J. Trump, the 47th President of the United States, is turning the heat up to a level we have never seen before. He is taking direct aim at the corruption in Minnesota, demanding answers from Governor Tim Walz regarding a billion-dollar fraud scandal that has stolen food out of the mouths of the needy. I want you to pause and really let that sink in. Think about how many times you shouted at your television screen in the past, frustrated that the radical left could do whatever they wanted, with zero consequences. Think about the nights you worried about the country you were leaving to your grandchildren. Tonight, President Trump is telling you, I heard you. This isn't just political maneuvering, this is a rescue mission. The swamp is being drained, not with a teaspoon, but with a fire hose. It makes me emotional because I know what this means for you. I know you are watching this, maybe holding your spouse's hand, feeling that heavy burden lift off your shoulders. We are seeing a return to accountability. We are seeing a return to honor. When President Trump raised his hand on Inauguration Day, he promised he would fight for us every single day. And tonight, as these proceedings launch and these investigations heat up, we are seeing exactly what a fighter looks like. He is standing in the gap for us. He is saying that America is not for sale, and that if you betray the trust of the American people, you will answer for it. This is the moment we waited for. This is the moment where we can finally say, America is back.
That includes our next guest, House Oversight Committee Chairman James Comer. Chairman, thanks so much for joining us. I do appreciate it. I'm glad to see you taking action. The amount of things that are coming across your desk in the first year is just unbelievable to me of this congressional, 2-year term. But tell us what you're seeing in Minnesota, what you plan to do about it.
Well, first of all, for Tim Walz to say he didn't think it reached the billions category, I'm pretty confident it did exceed $1 billion. But let's say it's hundreds of millions of dollars. That's the attitude that so many Democrats I see in Congress and so many Democrats who occupy the governor's offices around the United States. They just don't care about the taxpayer dollars. They don't have any sympathy for the hardworking taxpayers who work hard and send their tax dollars to their state capital or to Washington, D.C. But what we've got in this investigation, Jason, is we've got something that is really helpful in congressional investigations, and that's credible whistleblowers. We're bringing in the state employees who first blew the whistle that there was fraud in Minnesota. And what we're learning is that they've been trying to warn Keith Ellison, the Attorney General, and Tim Walz, the governor, for years, not weeks, not months, but years, about the ongoing fraudulent activity from this massive Somali population in Minnesota. And neither Walz nor Ellison wanted to do anything about it for political reasons, because this has become a major base for the Democrat Party in Minnesota. So thankfully, we've had some state employees who have come forward. We're going to bring them in and start interviewing and deposing them. Hopefully, we'll get some information on some bank accounts that I can subpoena, and then we'll follow the money and figure out how much money was stolen and who played a part in that.
Yeah, most people don't realize you actually have a banking background, so numbers are not difficult for you like they are Tim Walz. So I think that will play a key difference. And these whistleblowers are key here. In terms of where you go next, you do the interviews. Do you expect to have public hearings on this? Where does this ultimately go?
Well, we may have hearings, but we've been doing a lot of depositions and transcribed interviews, and I think you would agree, Jason, those just are so much more efficient than public hearings. But I would assume at some point we will have public hearings because the American people are very interested in this. I've heard more people comment on this investigation than any we've done in a long time because it's such a massive amount of money. If you're talking $2 or $3 billion from social programs in the state of Minnesota, which isn't a very big state, that's a significant percentage of their whole budget for social programs. And, we're having to tighten our belt in Washington because we can't continue to spend $3 trillion a year more than we take in. But we want to support our most vulnerable citizens. And to see the Minnesota leadership led by Tim Walz just say, well, it's no big deal. It wasn't that much money when it was a significant amount of money. But the arrogance and the attitude of just not having any concern whatsoever of the tax dollars, that's got to stop. And I think the American people see this, and I hope they're outraged. I hope we'll be able to get information and answers about the fraud as quickly as possible, and we'll let the American people know it, and it'll probably be in a committee hearing, but obviously in a report, and hopefully there'll be criminal referrals to the Department of Justice.
Yeah, my guess is there'll be other states that come along too, because it's happened in Minnesota. My guess is, I don't know, maybe a place like Illinois or somewhere else has this same challenge happening. Chairman Comer, Merry Christmas. Thank you so much. All right,
Folks, I want you to close your eyes for a second. I want you to picture a little boy in a snowy town in Minnesota. Let's call him Timmy. His mom works 2 jobs just to keep the heat on, and sometimes the cupboard is bare. That school lunch or that community meal is the only warm food Timmy gets all day. Now, imagine someone walking up to Timmy, taking that plate of food right out of his hands, and laughing while they walk away to buy a fancy car or a vacation home. It makes your blood boil, doesn't it? It makes you want to scream. Well, I'm here to tell you, that isn't a made-up story. That is exactly what happened under Governor Tim Walz's nose. And it breaks my heart. We are talking about the Feeding Our Future scandal, and the numbers are so big, they are hard to believe. Over $250 million meant to feed hungry children, just like Timmy, vanished. Federal prosecutors say it was used to buy luxury cars, jewelry, and resort trips instead of bread and milk. And now, President Trump's team is uncovering that this might be just the tip of the iceberg. They are looking at billions, yes, billions with a B, that may have been drained from autism services and housing programs. Money meant to help the most vulnerable, the sick, and the poor, siphoned away by fraudsters while the leaders in charge looked the other way. This is why I get so emotional, and why I know you do too. It's not just about money, it's about betrayal. Governor Walz was supposed to be the goalkeeper. He was supposed to protect that money. But instead, the radical left let the gates stay wide open. They were so busy with their woke agendas that they forgot to protect the children. It makes you wonder, doesn't it? How could they let this happen? Was it incompetence? Or was it something worse? But wipe those tears, patriots. Because help has arrived. This is where the story turns from tragedy to triumph. President Trump isn't just a politician. He's a father and a grandfather. When he heard about this, sources say he was furious. He knows that every dollar stolen is a meal taken from an American child. That is why he is demanding a full audit. He is sending in the best investigators in the world to find every single penny. He is standing up for Timmy and every forgotten family in Minnesota. He is telling the fraudsters, the party is over. And folks, when Donald Trump fights for the innocent, he doesn't lose. We are finally getting the justice these families deserve.
This going back to 2013 with CCAP, this is where it started, but you know, there's at least an annual site visit in there. In these 14 high-risk programs right now, Jason, site visits aren't even required in many cases. We actually had a recent jury conviction get overturned by a judge here in Minnesota, and in that case, a DHS investigator stated that, well, we couldn't go investigate it to find out that this business was just simply run out of a P.O. box and was legitimate. We can't afford to do that, but for some reason, we can now afford anywhere from $8 to $19 billion in fraud, but we can't afford to do site visits. And one of the funny videos you'll see out there recently is Nick Shirley coming to Minnesota, a learning center, except the problem in this case, and this is how you know these site visits aren't actually occurring, because on the side of the building it says Learning Center. They couldn't even spell Learning Center correctly, and that just goes to show how deep the fraud is and how people are unwilling to investigate it at all. It's absurd.
Friends, I need you to stay with me, because this part of the story is painful. It is the kind of pain you feel when a friend betrays you, or when someone you trusted lets you down. We talked about the money. The millions of dollars meant for hungry children that was stolen by greedy scammers in Minnesota. But we have to ask the hard question. How did this happen? How did they get away with it for so long? The answer brings us right to the steps of the U.S. Capitol and into the office of Representative Ilhan Omar. This massive fraud didn't happen in a faraway land. It happened right in Minneapolis, the very heart of the district Ilhan Omar represents. While criminals were setting up fake companies and stealing from the poor, she was in Washington. And instead of sounding the alarm, instead of fighting to protect that money for her own neighbors, she has spent years attacking the values that make this country great. It hurts to say it, but it feels like she was more focused on tearing America down than building her community up. Imagine you are a legal immigrant. I know many of you watching are, or your parents were. You waited in line for years. You studied our history. You stood in a courtroom, placed your hand over your heart, and swore an oath to protect the United States with tears of joy streaming down your face. You love this flag because you know what it stands for? Now, imagine seeing a leader who took that same oath but seems to despise the very country that gave her a home. It is a slap in the face to every patriot who played by the rules. It makes you want to cry out, why? This is why President Trump's support for expelling her is so powerful. He understands that a house divided against itself cannot stand. He knows that we cannot have leaders who might be tied to the very communities where this fraud exploded without answering serious questions. Representative Randy Fine isn't being mean. He is being brave. He is asking the questions that everyone else was too scared to ask. He is fighting for the sanctity of our citizenship. When President Trump looks at this situation, he doesn't see politics. He sees a betrayal of the American family. He sees the feeding our future scandal and he connects the dots. He knows that weak leadership and a lack of love for our country allowed this rot to spread. But tonight, the cleaning crew is here. We are finally saying that if you want to sit in the people's house, you have to love the people. You have to put America first. Not foreign interests, and certainly not the interests of fraudsters. The healing is beginning, but first, we must remove the thorn. You know, folks, sometimes the truth hurts so much it's hard to speak. I want to take you back a few years. Think about 2020 and 2021. Think about how scared we all were. Small businesses were closing their doors, moms and dads lost their jobs, and we were told we had to sacrifice to keep each other safe. We did what we were told because we are Americans, and we look out for our neighbors. But while you were pinching pennies to buy groceries, while you were worrying if you could afford gas to get to work, something evil was happening in Minnesota. The timeline is absolutely sickening. Starting around 2018 and exploding during the pandemic, these criminals saw your generosity as a weakness. They looked at the money meant to feed hungry kids and they saw a gold mine. The evidence coming out now, thanks to the fearless investigators unleashed by President Trump, shows they made up lists of children. We call them ghost children. Thousands and thousands of names of kids who don't even exist. They claim to be feeding these imaginary children just so they could pocket millions of dollars of your tax money. I have to pause here because it makes me weep. I think about the real children in Appalachia, or in the inner cities, or right here in my own town, who went to bed hungry. And then I think about these fraudsters in Minnesota, laughing as they bought real estate and luxury goods with money stolen in the name of starving kids. It is the most disgusting thing I have ever heard. And for years, nobody stopped it. Governor Walz's administration let the money flow like a river. Representative Omar's district was ground zero. Why didn't they scream from the rooftops? Why didn't they protect our treasury? But this is why we voted for President Trump. He doesn't care about being polite to the political class. He cares about the truth. He looked at these files and he said, this ends now. He understands that every dollar stolen by these ghost children scams is a dollar stolen from a real American child's future. The Justice Department is finally peeling back the layers of this onion, and the stench is overwhelming. But we have to smell it to clean it. We are finally finding out who knew what and when. And let me tell you, the days of hiding behind fake names and shell companies are over. The light of truth is shining, and the rats are running for cover.
This because I'm sure we will find even more connections. This is what Ilhan Omar said, defending the program that she introduced in the House that led to all of these billions being stolen.
Yeah, it's a quote. She's telling Fox Digital. So this is the 2020 Meals Act. Ilhan Omar drops legislation intended to feed poor children during COVID because they might not have access, and it opened up a 100% USDA waiver that was exploited grotesquely. Fox News asked her, do you regret pushing for that bill, the Meals Act? Do you think it led to the fraud? Ilhan Omar, absolutely not. It did help feed kids. Okay, you see those, how it started, how it ended. Let's do how this started, what the funds were meant for feeding children, for helping recovering addicts find a place to live, helping disabled adults live independently, one-on-one therapy for autistic children.
That was the promise.
That was the idea. Now, here's where the funds allegedly went. You see that on the right side of the screen. Wire transfers to China and East Africa, a villa in the Maldives, first-class plane tickets, luxury vehicles, lakefront property in Minnesota, designer jewelry, and crypto. And that's just among the things we know. Yet Ilhan Omar, and to a lesser degree, even Governor Walz, is not owning up to the fact that this was so grotesquely exploited that now the House Oversight Committee under Chairman James Comer is subpoenaing documents and may even drag people like Governor Walz up to Capitol Hill to say, did any of this money that was being sent back, forget the gifts and the luxury cars, did any of this money go back to terrorist organizations? And that's what we're going to find out.
Well, and there's other questions. People want to know, did the money go overseas, get laundered, and come back? Right. There's lots of questions, and so they should keep digging and digging and digging. But it also comes to this fundamental question that we were talking about earlier, which is, immigration. What kind of immigrants should we bring over? And I would say we should bring over immigrants who love our country. And if you're stealing from our country, if you're ripping us off, you don't love us.
Right.
And everybody who has any little finger in this pot should be taken out of here.
And if you set up an immigration system that invites people to come to this country so that they can steal, you have a really screwed up system.
Yeah. And again, we have at a more philosophical level, you have all this money going out. I don't know, they go, we need money for the kids because it's COVID.
Right.
And nobody's actually probably checking to say, is there a need?
Right.
Are there kids that aren't getting food because of COVID? Because there was a lot of crazy stuff happening during COVID. And so, the Democrats' idea of helping is just, here's money, get it out. Get it out the door.
Never let them spend $2 trillion on anything.
Exactly.
Well, and that's why you had the biggest fraud case in history, certainly in the state of Minnesota, with feeding our children. They were just making names up in rosters that didn't exist.
And to be fair, I've never seen more uncovering of fraud as much as it upsets us. And it's upsetting to see what they've done. This is the biggest fraud in our history, I think, what happened in Minnesota. But all the fraud that has been uncovered through Doge and other things, USAID, that is very encouraging. I think it will be the legacy of this administration, the amount of government fraud that we are uncovering. And it's a testament to that there's just too much money in government.
My friends, I want to talk to the veterans watching tonight. I want to talk to the grandmothers who saved every penny in a coffee can just to buy Christmas presents. I want to talk to the farmers who get up before the sun rises, working the land until their hands are calloused and bleeding. You are the backbone of this country. You are the reason the American flag flies high. But for the last few years, while you were sacrificing the swamp in Washington and the fraudsters in Minnesota were laughing at you, it breaks my heart into a million pieces to think about it. I know a veteran named Jim, down in Georgia. He served 2 tours overseas, fought for our freedom, and came home with scars you can see, and scars you can. Last winter, Jim couldn't afford to fix his heater. He sat in his living room wrapped in blankets, shivering, too proud to ask for help because he believes in standing on his own 2 feet. Now, think about that billion-dollar fraud scandal under Tim Walz. Think about the millions stolen by people claiming to feed ghost children. That money, your money, could have kept Jim warm. It could have helped a single mom buy diapers. It could have fixed a pothole on your street. Instead, it went to line the pockets of criminals who hate everything we stand for. This is why the expulsion of Ilhan Omar is not just politics. It is about justice for Jim. It is about justice for you. When you have leaders who let this happen, who focus on dividing us instead of protecting our treasury, they are spitting on the sacrifice of every soldier who died for this country. It makes me so angry I can barely speak. But then I remember who is in the White House. I remember that President Trump sees Jim, too. He sees the forgotten men and women. President Trump is the only one who stood up and said, no more. He is taking those billions back. He is freezing the accounts of the corrupt and demanding that every single cent be accounted for. He is fighting for the veteran shivering in the cold. He is fighting for the grandma counting her pennies. He is ensuring that never again will an American hero be neglected, while a scam artist lives in luxury. The swamp is deep, and it is dirty. But President Trump has his boots on, and he is wading in to clear the muck, so that real Americans can finally breathe again.
Legislation that led to the $250 million being defrauded. She held events at one of the restaurants that was named in the fraud case and had a former staffer who was convicted in the fraud investigation. That's from the New York Post. And 60 of the 79 people who've been indicted in this are from her 5th congressional district there in Minnesota. So a lot of people are saying, wow, there's a lot of potential links here. How much did she know about that?
My friends, I want you to listen closely, because what I'm about to share is the heartbeat of this entire movement. It's easy to get lost in the numbers, the billions of dollars, the legal filings, the speeches in Congress, but behind every headline, there is a human face. There is a voice that has been silenced for too long, and tonight, thanks to the courage of President Trump and the Republicans in the House, those voices are finally roaring like a lion. I'm talking about people like Brenda, a grandmother from rural Minnesota who wrote to me just an hour ago. She told me, Harlan, I watched my town crumble. I watched businesses leave. I watched my neighbors lose hope. And all the while, we heard rumors about money flowing into Minneapolis, money that was supposed to help us, but never arrived. Brenda said she cried when she heard the news today, not tears of sadness, but tears of validation. She said, finally, someone believes us? Finally, President Trump is fighting for the little guy. This is what the radical left never understood. They thought they could ignore people like Brenda. They thought they could look down on the hard-working patriots in flyover country and get away with it. They thought they could funnel our tax dollars into their own corrupt schemes, and we would just stay quiet. But they forgot one thing. The American spirit is unbreakable. And when you have a champion like President Trump, that spirit catches fire. The expulsion of Ilhan Omar isn't about hate. It's about love. It's about loving this country enough to protect it from those who would drain it dry. It's about loving your neighbor enough to demand that the money meant for their care actually reaches them. When Representative Randy Fine stands up in the House, he is standing up for Brenda. He's standing up for every forgotten American who felt like their vote didn't matter. And let me tell you, the relief is palpable. You can feel it in the air. It's like a heavy storm cloud is finally breaking, and the sun is shining through. We aren't just watching political theater. We are watching a rescue operation. We are watching the restoration of faith in our government. President Trump is proving that justice isn't just a word in a textbook. It's a promise he intends to keep, and for the first time in a long time, the voiceless know they are being heard loud and clear. Folks, I want you to take a deep breath with me. Do you feel that? It's a feeling we haven't felt in a long, long time. It is the feeling of safety. For years, we watched the news and felt like the bad guys were winning. We saw criminals walking free, while honest citizens were treated like suspects. We saw politicians like Ilhan Omar mocking our values while our borders were wide open. It felt like the walls were crumbling down around us, and there was no one left to hold up the roof. But tonight, the cavalry has finally arrived. President Trump didn't just win an election, he launched a rescue mission. I want you to picture the scene in Minnesota right now. For years, those fraudsters involved in defeating our future, scandal and the billion-dollar welfare fraud, thought they were untouchable. They thought Governor Walz would keep looking the other way. They thought they could keep stealing your tax dollars forever. But imagine the panic in their eyes tonight as they realize the sheriff is back in town. President Trump's Department of Justice is moving with a speed and a fury we have never seen. They aren't just filing paperwork. They are kicking down doors. They are freezing assets. They are telling every single person who stole from the American people, you are going to pay it back. It brings tears to my eyes because it reminds me of when my dad used to check under the bed for monsters. He made sure I was safe so I could sleep soundly. That is what President Trump is doing for this nation. He is checking under the bed. He is clearing out the monsters who have been feeding off our hard work. And this move to expel Ilhan Omar? It is the same thing. It is about securing our home. You cannot have a safe home if you leave the front door open to people who don't respect your family. The Republicans in the House, backed by the president, are finally locking the door. They are saying that the people's house belongs to people who love America. Plain and simple. Think about the relief of a mom in the suburbs tonight, watching this news. She knows that her tax money isn't going to fund terror or fraud anymore. She knows it's going to build roads, schools, and a strong military. She knows that the man in the Oval Office is awake, standing guard like a lion at the gate. The fear is leaving our hearts, folks, and it is being replaced by a glorious, golden hope. The swamp is draining, the rats are fleeing, and for the first time in years, the good guys are winning. My fellow Americans, I want you to look around your living room for a moment. Look at the photos on the mantle. Your parents, your kids, your grandkids, everything you do, every shift you work, every sacrifice you make, is for them. You built that life with honest hands, and for years, there was a gnawing feeling in the pit of our stomachs that the system was laughing at us. We followed the rules, we paid our taxes, and we watched as the corrupt elite in places like Minnesota treated our treasury like a free-for-all buffet. It made us feel small. It made us feel like suckers. But tonight, that feeling is gone. Tonight, dignity is returning to the American citizen. What we are witnessing with President Trump's crackdown on the Tim Walz administration's fraud scandal, and the House's brave move to expel Ilhan Omar, is not just punishment, it is restoration. It is the great American restoration. President Trump is walking into the messy room that the radical left behind, and he's picking up the furniture. He is washing the walls. He is saying, this house is too beautiful to be treated this way. I spoke to a steelworker named Dave in Pennsylvania just before I went on air. Dave is a big guy, hands rough from years at the mill. He told me, Harlan, for the last 4 years, I felt stupid for being honest. I watched people cheat the system and get rich, while I struggled to pay for gas. But seeing President Trump go after these fraudsters, seeing him demand that Omar answer for her actions, it makes me proud to be an honest man again. Dave started crying on the phone. Folks, a grown man weeping because he finally feels like his honesty matters again. That is the power of this moment. We are watching the standard being raised back up where it belongs. The message ringing out from the White House to the halls of Congress is crystal clear. If you cheat America, you lose. If you steal from the poor, you will pay. If you hate our country, you have no business helping to run it. It is so simple, yet we missed it for so long. President Trump is validating every single one of you who played by the rules. He's taking that stolen money back. Money that was meant for hungry kids but went to buy luxury condos, and he is ensuring it goes back to the people. He is dusting off the American dream. He is polishing it until it shines. And as I watch these updates roll in, seeing the panic in the eyes of the corrupt, I don't feel anger anymore. I feel a swelling pride in my chest that is so big, I think my heart might burst. We aren't the suckers anymore, patriots. We are the masters of our own house again. I want you to close your eyes and think back to a time when you were little. Remember when your dad or your grandpa made you a promise? Maybe he promised to take you fishing, or to catch you if you jumped into the deep end of the pool. Do you remember that feeling of absolute trust? You didn't worry. You didn't doubt. You just knew that he would be there. For a long time, we lost that feeling in this country. We were told one thing and given another. We were promised safety, but got chaos. We were promised prosperity, but got inflation. But tonight, as I report on this historic crackdown, this draining of the swamp in Minnesota, and this move to expel Ilhan Omar, I want you to realize something profound. We are finally living in the era of the promise kept. President Trump stood on stage after stage, in rain and in heat, and he looked us in the eye. He promised he would root out corruption. He promised he would protect our tax dollars. He promised he would put America first. And tonight, he is delivering. This isn't just about catching bad guys. It's about honoring the covenant between a leader and his people. It's about restoring that childlike trust that our government is actually on our side. Think about the single mom in Detroit I met last year. She works 2 shifts just to put food on the table. She told me she voted for Trump because she believed he wouldn't forget her. Tonight, as federal agents freeze the assets of those who stole from the poor, President Trump is whispering to her, I didn't forget. He is showing her that her hard work matters more than the greed of the political elite. He is showing her that her vote was the most powerful weapon on earth. It brings me to tears to see it. It really does. Because when a leader keeps his word, it heals the soul of a nation. We aren't just angry anymore, we are vindicated. We are seeing that the cynical people were wrong. Character matters. Strength matters. And tonight, every American who held on to hope through the dark times is being rewarded. The swamp is being drained, not because it's easy, but because he promised us he would do it. And Donald Trump keeps his promises. My friends, as we come to the end of our time together tonight, I want to leave you with a picture that has been burning in my heart all evening. I want you to imagine tomorrow morning. I want you to picture the sun coming up over the cornfields of Iowa, over the mountains of Colorado, and over the skyline of New York City. When that sun rises, it will shine on a different America than the one we had yesterday. It will shine on a country where justice is real. It will shine on a land where the corrupt are afraid and the righteous are bold. For so long, we worried about what kind of country we were leaving to our children. We laid awake at night, terrified that the American dream was slipping away, stolen by fraudsters, mocked by radicals, and squandered by weak leaders. But tonight, I can look you in the eye and tell you, the dream is safe. We secured it. You secured it by standing with President Trump, by refusing to give up. You have ensured that your grandchildren will grow up in a nation where right is right and wrong is punished. I think about a little girl named Liberty. Yes, that's her real name, who sent me a drawing last week. It was a picture of a lion standing on a rock, guarding a flock of sheep. Underneath, she wrote in crayon, "Thank you for keeping us safe." Folks, that is what this is all about. It's not about vengeance. It's about safety. It's about ensuring that little Liberty grows up in a country where her lunch money isn't stolen by scammers in Minnesota, and where her Congress protects her flag. We have walked through the valley of the shadow, but we are coming out on the other side. President Trump has led us through the storm, and now we can see the harbor. The swamp is draining, and in its place, we are planting a garden of hope. We are planting seeds of integrity, strength, and patriotism that will bloom for generations. So dry those tears, patriots. Let them be tears of joy. Hug your loved ones a little tighter tonight. Look at the flag on your porch and know that it waves a little prouder. We are winning. America First is not just a slogan, it is a reality. The dawn is here, and it is beautiful. Thank you for watching Harlan Reports. If this message touched your heart, if you believe in the truth we share, please hit that subscribe button and like this video. We need you in this army of truth tellers every single day. Together, we are unstoppable. I am Harlan Whitaker. God bless you, God bless our magnificent President, Donald Trump, and God bless the United States of America. Good night.